We've already talked about the growth in the Islanders' center prospect pool, and we've talked about the left wing prospect pool and their growth as well. Let's shift away for forwards temporarily. We'll get back to right wings, but let's focus on the largest pocket of prospects in the Islanders' system, and that's left-handed defensemen. How have they been growing this year and overall? So like I did with the centers and the left wing, let's start off by just giving an overview of how things look and then break it down player by player. So here's the graph of the week by week growth, growth for the left-handed defenseman in the Islander system. And I've also given you a color legend. So for each color line, you can see what player that corresponds to. And again, we're going to break that down player by player like we've done before. But right away, you can tell that there's basically two tiers of defensemen in the Islanders left defense prospect pool. You've got the three guys up top and then Parker Witherspoon, which is that like yellow line floating in the middle. And then you got the other crop of defensemen, and one of them is flat right on the x-axis, and we'll get to who that is. I'm sure you can probably already guess who that is. So let's get into each and every one of them. How have they grown this year, and how does that look on a year-on-year growth rate? The first player we're going to look at here, and we're doing this alphabetically, is Sebastian Aho. When you look at the graph, he's the one that kind of flatlines at 0 before spiking up. That's the blue line anyways. That spikes up halfway through and then kind of drops down as it goes forward. And that's obvious from Sebastian Aho's year. You already know that he doesn't play a whole lot, right? So he doesn't register any points. That's the first couple of weeks of the season. He gets in, gets on a couple of points. Everything looks good before it dries up again. Sebastian Aho is a replacement level defenseman at the NHL level. And that's not an insult at all, because everyone would love to be one that isn't already, right? Like everyone would love to be in the show who isn't already there. Sebastian Aho is a borderline NHLer, and there's nothing wrong about that. And when you look at his year-over-year growth, it's the same thing, right? He gets up to 35 in 18-19, right? That's playing at the for the Bridgeport Sound Tigers. Drops down the year next before shooting up wild next year, right? 2021 NHLE of 87.4. Holy hell! Well, he's got 3 games played, putting up 2 points in those 3 games. And you're going to say, like, how does 2 points in 3 games equal to 87 NHLE? Well, there's an inflator for defensemen in my model. And the reason for that is it's hard to compare and contrast players from different positions, like forwards and defensemen. Because forwards and defensemen don't score at the same rate. And this entire model is built on production rate. And so I can't say, like, Cameron Berg is a better prospect than Matthias Reianemi, for example, or Robin Salo, for example, because Cameron Berg scores more frequently than Robin Salo. Yeah, no doy, defensemen just don't put up points as often as forwards. So to kind of bridge that gap, I give defensemen a 1.6 inflator. And that tends to be a good measure. Forwards score 1.6 times more frequently on average than defensemen. So that's why I did it. But so that's why you get an 87.46 for Sebastian Aho that year in 2021. Long-winded way of describing why he's got a wild NHLE here. And then it drops to 21.86, which is more reflective of where he is as an NHLer, because this is NHL production. He's played 12 NHL games, put up 2 points. He is a 22-point player at the NHL level. That much we already know. So this makes a whole lot of sense. Then we have Samuel Bolduc. That's the red line. And when you look at this graph, you're going to say, what red line are you talking about? Just look all the way down. The x-axis is really what I'm talking about here. You'll see on the x-axis, there's a red glow. That's Samuel Bolduc's line. That's the line. Because he's got 0 production. Absolutely no production at all over his season, which is, like we've talked about before, kind of concerning. We can justify or at least explain the fact that, well, he's kind of recovering. He might be playing more of a defensive role. But there is also the added, factor of he's maybe not playing that well as well for the Bridgeport Islanders, reflected by the 0 points in 25 games. He had 14 in 24 last year. So when you look at his season week over week, he's obviously not growing. When you look at things year over year, you saw a player that was trending upwards, right? The growth rate was there for him. It is not there anymore, obviously because he's got 0 points. Now, we have to take that with a little bit of a grain of salt because there's no way this guy went from a 30-point player to just kind of like not being good at hockey anymore. The third player, again, we're doing this alphabetically, is Christian Krieger. When you look at the overall graph, he's the yellow line, not the one in the middle between the two sections there. He's the one in the bottom section, kind of floating just below 10. Things have kind of plateaued for Christian Krieger the entire year, and that's kind of to be expected. He's not going to put up a lot of points because that's not his game. That's just not what he does. He's a defense-first guy. And these rankings don't fare well for guys like that because they don't put up points, and this entire system is ranked off points. But the fact that he's kind of plateauing and not regressing at all is a good sign. And when you look at his year over year, he's progressing. Every year he's slowly taking a step forward, right into this year where he's a growth rate of 2.5. That's good. You want to see that year over year growth, even if it's marginal. And Christian Krieger is definitely providing marginal year over year growth. Then we've got Alex Ymalin. On the graph, he's that green line that starts close to 10 and then just slowly drifts towards 5. His year started off well, and it's not really progressed since then. It's not fallen off a cliff, but it has not progressed necessarily going forward. Now, when we look at a year over year kind of growth rate for him, he's still growing. It's not a marginal improvement like we saw with Christian Krieger, but it's positive, right? He's still doing positive things. And we have to remember, because he's playing at the U20 level, whatever point he's doing doesn't reflect as well as if he's playing at, let's say, the Liga level, or if he's playing at the SHL level, right? So because he's playing at the U20 level, even if he puts up a bucket load of points, it's not going to shoot up unless he absolutely dominates, which he's not doing. What he is doing, though, is he's playing a lot of minutes and he's leading the line defensively for Yip's U20 side. That's going to bode well going forward for him. He's going to be playing at the Liga level next year full time. At what role or in what role, we'll see. What kind of defenseman, we'll see. But what we want to see now is he's at least kind of giving positive growth year over year, and that's something to kind of put a pen in your head on. Next is Ben Mirages. He's the orange line that starts at 5, goes down, plateaus before going up over the last couple of weeks. Good signs, except he's no longer with Providence anymore. He left under a cloud of mystery. No one knows exactly why he's no longer with them, but he is no longer with them. I'm still trying to find out why. I don't have any concrete information to share yet. But things were going well week over week, specifically near the end here. But when you look at things year over year, not so much. Last year, really good year for him. He grew by 5.8 NHLE. This year, though, took a hit, negative 3.65 NHLE. Not really trending in the right direction year over year. Should he get a chance at being a pro? Yeah, assuming this whole kind of kerfuffle with Providence isn't a negative thing. Yeah, why not? Give him a chance at being a pro, see what he can do. Fellow Finnish defender Matias Rajaniemi is next. His line starts just above 10. That's the fuchsia line, which kind of matches his team color. And then slowly trends down. Which, again, just like Christian Krieger, he's not a guy that puts up a lot of points. That's just not his game. He's got 3 on the year. Not a whole lot going on for him defensively or offensively. Defensively, he's been much better. He still hasn't shown that meanness, though, right? That everyone is looking for, specifically the Finns. That's why they didn't invite him to the World Junior Championship, although maybe that changes if they ever have another one this year. But week over week, again, things trending down, but that happens, right? Especially for a guy who doesn't put up points. So I'm not going to worry about that so much. Now, year over year, we're still seeing negative growth this year. We would like to see more because from before this year, he was trending upwards, right? 0.38, 192, 342. That's growth rate year over year. That's not just even marginal anymore. That's really good growth rate for a defenseman. Again, a defensive defenseman and a young one at that. He was one of the younger players in the 2020 draft, and he's been playing with men for a few years now. So you want to see this go up a little bit more. It might dip down this year, but I suspect by next year, it's probably going to jump up again, up forward that is, because he's going to be more of a veteran presence at the Liga level. And I think his minutes are going to go up a lot. But for now, things aren't looking great for Matias Rajaniemi in terms of his growth, but that doesn't mean things are over yet. He's still quite young. Then we move to Robin Salo, who's the top name in the Islanders' left-handed defensive prospect pool, if not the leader in the prospect pool itself, assuming you take out Kiefer Bellows. His NHLE right now, when you look at the week over week, shoots up, right? He starts with the Bridgeport Islanders, starts putting up points, it shoots up, and now it's kind of regressing week over week. Concern? I would say no. The fact that he jumps up to a 35-point player, about what he was in week 2 of the season, he puts up a bunch of points in a few games for the Bridgeport Islanders, that's definitely going to shoot up. That's a good thing. And so why is it regressing? Well, not only did it kind of dry up with the Bridgeport Islanders, but he's also at the NHL level right now, right? That's why it's drying up, because he's not playing every day like he was with the Bridgeport Islanders. He's playing at a higher caliber at the NHL level, so there's going to be an adjustment period there. And he's also playing for the New York Islanders. What that means is that he's not being thrown into the NHL to play top 4 minutes. He's being thrown up there to play like replacement level minutes. We're going to get you out there with some cushy shifts. That's what I'm looking for. Some cushy shifts. Play like 11 to 13 minutes a night, unless we have to play you more. So he's not getting a ton of ice time to put up those points that is needed to bump up that NHLE. So it's going down when you look at his week over week, and it's going down when you look at his year over year, right? He went from a 44-point player last year when he was playing with Orebro to what is a 24-point player now. That's a big drop. Well, we can justify it by what we just talked about earlier. He's at the NHL level. That's the big takeaway here. He's at the NHL level. So if he's going to have a drop-off and it's because he's playing at the NHL level, I'll take it. Because this is more descriptive, right? This is more, yes, he's a 24-point player right now, but he's playing strictly at the NHL level, and we'll take that. Even if that means there's a little bit of a dip, because it's going to go up eventually. This player is going to be a 30-point player at the NHL level. You have my word. The last two guys are the two oldest ones in the system. They're 25 years old, so they're basically not prospects anymore, but I've still kept them in this. The first one is Mitchell Vanissalpel, and he's that like light red, almost pink line that just slowly but surely is trending up and is now kind of plateaued at what is essentially a 24-point NHL player. He's doing well for the Bridgeport Islanders. He's a good puck transporter. He's a really, really good skater. Really fast, really smooth. He's just not very big, but he's got all the tools to maybe be a bottom pair player at the NHL level. 24 points right now, and that's, again, growth. You can see a week over week that kind of growing and then plateauing, and then when you look at his growth rate year over year, you see kind of like that decline in the first 2 years. 1920 he missed entirely because of injury, but then you see the 7.9 increase from that the year prior, and then a 6.7 increase again this year. Now you can forget the increase for 2021 because the year before he didn't do anything, so any production is going to be an increase. But when you look at it this year, he's even doing better than he was last year. I don't think he's got a role for the Islanders at the NHL level. So if they're looking to trade anything and to get value out of prospects, he's one of the guys I expect them to trade this year. Last one here is Parker Wotherspoon. And when you look at his week over week, you can see he's the one in the middle there. It goes up to almost 20 and then kind of like flat, not really flat lines, but moves up and down around the 15 to 18 point mark. And that's frankly good for a guy who's, let's face it, a defense-first defenseman. He's projected right now to be a 16-point player at the NHL level. He's having a good year for the Bridgeport Islanders. Week over week, things are going well, obviously. Then when you look at things year over year, you see that dip last year, COVID year, 24 games, anything can happen. But trending back up after that to where he was in 1920 as a 22, 23-point player at the NHL level. If the Islanders didn't have Grant Hutton already in the system, I would suspect that Parker Wotherspoon would be that guy flipping on and off the taxi squad. That's the Islanders' left-handed defensive depth chart and their growth over the year. Thank you for watching. Thank you for following. If you have not subscribed yet, please do so. And if you have, thank you, thank you, thank you.